welcome back to Movies on the Brain. I'm Jason, and after nearly a year since tackling Death Race 2000, we're back in the driver's seat, this time with Death Race from 2008. A brutal modern-day reimagining directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, packed with raw steel, explosive action, and no shortage of blood-soaked mayhem. With Jason Statham, Ian McShane, Joan Allen, and Tyrese Gibson leading the charge, I dove into the unrated cut for this review, where the violence is cranked up and the brakes are nowhere to be found. Let's see if this reboot roars past the finish line or crashes on impact. Death Race opened in theaters on August 22nd, 2008 with a budget of $45 million. During its 8-week theatrical run, it earned $36.3 million domestically and $39.6 million internationally, making a worldwide total of $76 million. Its opening weekend, which was the same weekend as the Beijing Olympics in 2008, saw it earn $12.6 million, finishing number 3 in the box office behind only The House Bunny and Tropic Thunder, numbers 2 and number 1 respectively, with The House Bunny also opening the same weekend. Its final week in theaters saw it earn $102,200, finishing its box office run at number 41. In 2012, the collapse of the U.S. economy and subsequent increase in crime rates led to the rise of privatized prisons. One such prison is Terminal Island Penitentiary, whose warden, Claire Hennessy, earns profits from broadcasting Death Race, a vehicular combat racing series. Throughout each event, Terminal Island inmates battle each other in specially modified, weaponized, and armored cars on an enclosed track filled with obstacles and traps to win their freedom. In 2020, in the final round of an event, a masked driver nicknamed Frankenstein is nearing the finish line, pursued by his rival Machine Gun Joe. His navigator, Case, reports that his defensive weapons have malfunctioned. Against her protest, Frankenstein, one win away from freedom, refuses to let Joe finish first. Case ejects herself out of the car just before Joe destroys it with a rocket launcher, killing Frankenstein. Industrial worker and ex-con Jensen Ames struggles to support his family. When the steel mill he works at is closed, he returns home to his wife, Susie, and their newborn daughter, Piper. A masked assailant knocks him unconscious. Jensen wakes up with a bloody knife in his hand, Susie dead nearby, and policemen storming into his home and arresting him. He is sentenced to life imprisonment while Piper is placed in foster care. 6 months later, Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Prison. Warden Hennessy's second-in-command, Ulrich, calls Jensen to her office. Hennessy reveals that Frankenstein had died from his injuries and offers Jensen freedom in exchange for standing in for Frankenstein at one event. Jensen accepts the offer and meets Frankenstein's crew, which consists of Coach, Gunner, and Lists. They suspect Hennessy wants him to become the new Frankenstein to regain audience and profits, which have dwindled since Frankenstein's absence. On the first day of the 3-day event, Jensen meets his navigator, Case. During the race, his vehicle's defensive equipment again mysteriously malfunctions. Jensen sees Pachenko perform the same hand gesture at him as the masked assailant and realizes Pachenko killed his wife. Distracted, Jensen is blindsided by Joe, causing him to finish last. After the race, Jensen attacks Pachenko, prompting him to admit the truth. Hennessy ordered him to frame Jensen so she could have a replacement for Frankenstein. On the second day, Jensen threatens to eject Case unless she explains the truth about the malfunctions. Case admits she was offered release papers in exchange for sabotaging Frankenstein's car to keep him from winning. Jensen catches up to Pachenko and tricks him into slamming his car head-on into a concrete barrier. He then exits the car and kills Pachenko by snapping his neck. Hennessy unleashes the Dreadnought, a multi-weapon tanker truck, to make the races more exciting. After the Dreadnought violently massacres most of the racers, Jensen works with Joe to destroy enraging Hennessy. Second day ends with Jensen and Joe as the only survivors. Hennessy orders Ulrich to plant a bomb underneath Jensen's car. She offers Jensen rewards to keep racing as Frankenstein, which he rejects. Jensen approaches Joe and proposes cooperation. On the final race, Hennessy manipulates the racetrack to deprive Jensen of offensive and defensive abilities, letting Joe chip away at his armor. Joe shoots a rocket at Jensen's car and misses, as shown in the prologue, destroying a portion of the wall which both cars drive through. They get to the bridge towards the mainland. Hennessy and Ulrich, realizing Joe and Jensen are making a break for it, shut down the Death Race live stream and send their men after them in patrol cruisers, also disabling the weapons on Jensen and Joe's vehicles. Hennessy activates the bomb, but it had already been removed and deactivated by Coach. Pursued by two of Hennessy's helicopters loaded with more prison guards to a railway depot, Jensen jumps out of the car as Case takes his place, donning the Frankenstein mask and outfit. While the pursuers capture Case, Joe and Jensen escape on a freight train. Despite the escapes, Hennessy is happy with the ratings. She opens a present only to find the bomb intended for Jensen. Coach remotely detonates the bomb, killing both Hennessy and Ulrich. He then turns to the audience and says, "I love this game," as the screen fades to black. 6 months later, Joe and Jensen work as mechanics in Mexico with Piper in Jensen's custody. They are soon reunited with Case, who has won a muscle car in a card game and stays with them. Now let's look at the cast and some of their other roles they've had. Jason Statham as Jensen Ames. Other roles for Jason Statham include H in Wrath of Man, Lee Christmas in the Expendables franchise, and Crawford in War. Joan Allen as Warden Claire Hennessy. Other roles for Joan Allen include Pat Nixon in Nixon, Nancy in Room, and Pam Landy in the Jason Bourne franchise. Ian McShane as Coach. Other roles for Ian McShane include Tai Lung in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, Winston in the John Wick franchise, and Blackbeard in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Tyrese Gibson as Joe Machine Gun Joe Mason. Other roles for Tyrese Gibson include The Man with No Name in Bad Hombres, Kyle Williams in Legion, and AJ in Flight of the Phoenix. Natalie Martinez as Casey, aka Case. Other roles for Natalie Martinez include Gabby in End of Watch, Megan in Ugly Dolls, and Detective Jamie Lovato in the TV show CSI New York. Max Ryan as Slovo Pachenko. Other roles for Max Ryan include Kane in Rage, Lieutenant Chuck Gwynn in USS Indianapolis, Men of Courage, and Mark Dillon in Best Fake Friends. Jason Clarke as Ulrich. Other roles for Jason Clarke include Dan in Zero Dark 30, Roger Robb in Oppenheimer, and Rule in Texas Killing Fields. Frederick Kohler as Lists. Other roles for Frederick Kohler include Alex Butler in Mr. Mom, Dennis Peterson in The Evil Within, and Chip Lowell in the TV show Kate and Allie. Jacob Vargas as Gunner. Other roles for Jacob Vargas include Jorge Escobar in The Death and Life of Bobby Z, Juan Cortez in Jarhead, and Michael in Heaven is for Real. Justin Mater as Travis Colt. Other roles for Justin Mater include Billy Mitchum in A Very Merry Mix-Up, Jimmy in the TV show Flashpoint, and Constable Lumet in Cold Blooded. Robert Lasardo as Hector the Grim Reaper Grimm. Other roles for Robert Lasardo include Emilio in The Mule, Perez in Arena Wars, and Smitty in Waterworld. Robert Shaw as 14K. Other roles for Robert Shaw include Liu Kang in 1995's Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Gobei in Beverly Hills Ninja, and Conroy in the Sleeping Dogs video game. David Carradine as Frankenstein. Before his passing in June of 2009, other roles for David Carradine include The Snake Charmer in Kill Bill Volume 2, The Master in Big Stan, and Raleigh Wilkes in Lone Wolf McQuade. I like how this movie starts with a text crawl of what year it is and what Death Race is and how it was formed, being a viral sensation and all that. If I wouldn't have seen Death Race 2000, I wouldn't have recognized David Carradine's voice under the Frankenstein mask at the Frankenstein helmet rather, at the beginning of the film. And I'm glad they did that because it was a fantastic choice. I thought it was anyway. Jason Statham losing it on the SWAT team that came to his place of employment was absolutely comical because of his facial expressions. Janiyah Stevens and Jason Statham, which funnily enough they share initials, have great chemistry as husband and wife. Jensen being framed for killing his wife and the actual murderer doing the finger gun adding, which will definitely be seen later on, is a later way, and it's an interesting way to get Jensen to go to Terminal Island. Jensen getting hosed down reminds me of Rambo and First Blood. I'm sure that was a reference to that movie. I do believe they are referencing what prisoners do to people who do what Jensen was framed for doing when we first get introduced to Pachenko. Fantastic reference, especially if that ends up being true. Joan Allen is absolutely menacing as Hennessy. She crushes it in her first scene with Jason Statham. Hennessy hinting at the fact she knows Jensen is innocent is incredible storytelling by the way Joan Allen is delivering those lines. I like who they cast as Lists and Coach just from their first handful of lines, especially Ian McShane as Coach. He just comes across as cool, calm, and collected. List running down all the racers Jensen was racing was a great way to introduce us to the previously unknown characters that are in the race. And then for Machine Gun Joe to come in and act all high and mighty. Great scene, and Tyrese Gibson was fantastic in that scene. I love the video package to the introduction of Death Race. It's a fun way to show us that it is a streaming race. I love, maybe it's just me, but I love watching all the cars shake and rumble as they're waiting for the race to start. It's such a neat visual. The vehicles going through the warehouse that first lap is really neat to watch with all the different camera angles they used. The way Grin gets killed by Joe is so satisfying. He's talking loads of crap only for him to get hit by Joe's truck. The visual of Colts and Joe's vehicles in slow motion shooting Frankenstein, well, Jensen, is so great to see. Plus, the sound of the shells dropping is great work by the sound design team. The scene where Hennessy threatens Jensen with never being able to see his daughter again is one of the best scenes early on in the film. Powerful, and it gives Hennessy what she wants, a ruthless driver. I like that we get a flashback of Ulrich waiting outside Jensen's house with Pachenko after that brutal fight between Jensen and Pachenko. Great scene followed up by, honestly, I feel like it's a really great flashback. What a fun sequence of Frankenstein targeting Pachenko, then staring daggers through the camera at Hennessy. Joe killing his navigator the way he did was so well shot, and the sound of the body hitting the metal beams was so visceral. I really like the design of the dreadnought. Doesn't seem very practical though. The way Joe and Frankenstein take down the dreadnought is absolutely incredible, especially visually. To then cut to Hennessy's reaction before the explosion is just the icing on the cake. I wonder if this role working with Tyrese Gibson is what got Jason Statham into the Fast and Furious franchise. They have incredible chemistry. I like the chemistry between Joan Allen and Jason Clarke. They work so well with each other as the villains. Thoroughly enjoy the chemistry between Joan Allen and Jason Statham. If they're in more movies together, I definitely need to watch them. What a fun escape sequence. Joe and Frankenstein really make you think they're still enemies, and all the while playing Hennessy and Ulrich. Clever bait and switch to have Jensen jump out of the car, leading people to believe, even if just for a second, that it was Case that jumped out. fun way to kill off Ulrich and Hennessy, letting Coach be the one to do it. I love they tied up the story with Cage too, and that Jensen got his daughter, and he and Joe are working together. Overall, it's an enjoyable follow up to Death Race 2000. Now, let's look at some fun facts and trivia. Joan Allen was the first choice to play Claire Hennessy, the female warden of Terminal Island. Much to writer and director Paul W.S. Anderson's surprise, Allen was just as keen to take the part, wanting to shake up her image at the time. A total of 34 cars were used in the film. They were constantly repaired by a team of 85 mechanics. Originally, this film was going to be a sequel to the original film, Death Race 2000. It was going to be titled Death Race 3000, and it was going to be a race around the world with futuristic hovering, invisible, and transforming cars. But everything had to be rewritten due to production costs. Jason Statham trained so hard for his role in this film that he went from 20% body fat to 6%. It took him 3 months to do so. Each of the 34 cars used in the film cost an estimated $250,000 to $300,000 to detail. That's a real scar on Natalie Martinez's face, the result of a childhood accident. It took approximately 6 weeks per car for the mechanics and fabricators to put the 9 racing cars in the film together and get them track ready. It took the film's writer and director Paul W.S. Anderson over 13 years to get this remake of the original film Death Race 2000 made. Colin Salmon was considered for the role of Machine Gun Joe in this film. And that wraps up my thoughts on Death Race. A gritty pedal to the metal reboot that kicks this franchise into overdrive. But the road doesn't stop here. I'll be continuing through the Death Race franchise in release order, which means up next are the prequels Death Race 2 and 3, Death Race 2 and Death Race 3 Inferno. While Death Race 2050 came out later, I'll be saving that for after the main storyline wraps up with Death Race Beyond Anarchy serving as the final stop in this review series. Stick around, there's plenty more carnage and chaos to come. This is Movies on the Brain. I'm Jason, and I'll see you on the next lap.